Can we sing along?
Sing along.
Cynthia.
See, she sings too. ThinkingRealEstate.com. Lord Dwyer Schlecke, Bill Schlecke.
I'm sure I'd be better if I didn't have this raspy voice.
No, it
I gotta take those
actually gives you a
marbles off.
sexier sound. So.
Oh, wow.
Wow. God, I love my husband.
It's a family show now.
How are you?
All right.
Good. Good. What's going on in the world of real estate?
Wow.
Geez, we had a report this morning. I wish I could find it.
Report on what?
Foreclosures.
Oh. They're down.
You know, they're up across the nation, though.
Are they?
Well,
Yeah.
All right, but before you get going, I got to give 2 shout-outs.
Oh,
Okay.
shout out time.
Yeah, first one is to Steve Madalena. I promised him I would do it, and I've known Steve for a long time. He comes to me occasionally for golfing tips. when he's having a problem with his swing.
You're funny,
he,
Bill.
He contacts me, and I
Oh, is it?
straighten him out.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I've never charged him for it either. Second one is to UPS, the personnel. I had to drop
Oh.
packages off last evening. On a case that's going in Marquette County, and they had to be there last night. I didn't realize they closed at 6. I got there at 6:15. They let me in. They were absolutely wonderful. I took the packages. I go back out. I'd locked my keys in my car. They let me back in.
Who would do something like that?
Yeah, somebody that was
That's what road service
concentrating
is
on
for.
something else. So they let me back in. I called Jackie, and she was bringing me the keys. But Judy, who is the person that is at the
Yeah.
desk,
You gotta
at
thank
UPS.
Jackie.
No, I got to thank Judy
Oh.
because she was kind enough to let me stay there while Jackie brought the keys out. But
You
I
know,
also
that's
give a
not-
shout out to Jackie because she was nice enough to do that. But at any rate, UPS personnel have been absolutely wonderful.
that's not
to
the
us.
first time they've gone above and beyond.
That's correct.
2 years ago, was it 2 years ago? We hadn't
At
gotten
Christmas
our
time,
Christmas presents, and our family was coming the very next day. They
Wow.
went in their trucks and dug them out.
How about that?
Unbelievable. And then just a few weeks ago, they took a last minute package. They are really cool out there.
Another touching Christmas story on Thinking Real Estate.
Oh, yeah,
and-
exactly.
And the other shout out would be to the family, and my condolences to the family of a very good friend of mine who died in a plane crash 2 weeks ago Saturday. It was Sean Jackson. He was the U of M professor who was the passenger in an experimental seaplane that crashed in Sarasota 2 weeks ago. He's a wonderful man, spectacular guy. He was a very good friend. He was a partner in my first airplane, and it was a very tragic accident, so my condolences to his family.
And my shout outs are also to Steve Madalena. So we're both thinking of you, Steve. You're a popular kind of guy. And then Mary Wiltsey. Talked to her yesterday. Good past client. She said she listens, so I'm giving her
good.
a shout out, man.
Thank you, Mary.
All right, so what's the subject matter today?
I have a couple things. One is a question I got, and you didn't have time to answer it for me.
Do I have time today?
I don't know. It depends on how long you
We got
talk.
20 minutes.
Yeah, take
Okay,
a breath.
Okay, all right.
But first, I want to point out, and actually, I got 2 calls yesterday. One from an old friend client,
You mean a former friend client?
a former.
No,
well,
well,
she's
not
still.
old.
They're still friends.
No, you don't want to describe them as old. You want to describe them as former.
Yeah. They're not old in age, but
Long time.
long time friend, former client of yours. However, her question had to do with short selling her condo, but she doesn't want to hurt her credit. And I had just pulled up on some website there. If you've got,
Well, if it's on the internet, it must be true.
it must be. It's in writing.
I have some advice.
What's that?
Don't call Judge Hathaway.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a perfect lesson in why you don't commit mortgage fraud. That was the front page article on the Detroit News yesterday. Yeah, and you know they're pleading that she not be sent to prison, but my guess is that the lawyers
got
going
it.
to send her for 12
Well, I
or
got
18
to tell you,
months.
the clients we
Will she
advise-
serve 6?
Will she serve what?
6 months?
I would think more.
Well,
Oh, you mean in terms of what
the maximum penalty
right.
is 18.
Yes, right.
18
Whether
months,
she'll
right?
actually be in there for 6, I don't know the answer
I'll
to
bet
that
she's not.
one. Yeah, you could be right, but
Aren't
it's
they sending
interesting.
her to some country
If
club?
you've got assets, they're going to come after you right now. They're not. They're
No,
not
but
being
but,
easy.
but Judge Hathaway, she pled guilty to mortgage fraud in connection with a short sale on property Grosse Pointe, and what they did apparently was
Total fraud.
Was not disclose assets that they held in
Well,
order.
they transferred
Hold
them
on,
to
hold
her
on.
stepdaughter.
They transferred them, but what they did is they didn't make full disclosure to the lender. And I have to tell you that this happens all the time, and I get questions from clients, and there are advisors, people who are so-called financial advisors, who are telling their clients, not lawyers, but the financial advisors telling the clients to sign false affidavits. There are 2 affidavits that you need to sign typically in connection with a short sale
At
or
closing,
where you get
right?
discount. Yeah, an anti-fraud affidavit and then an estoppel affidavit. And they're advising them to go ahead and lie about, 1, occupancy of the property, or 2, what their assets are, and it's an absolute mistake to do that because the feds, if it's a federal lending institution, it's a federal felony, you'll go to federal prison. If it's a state institution, it could be both a state and a federal offense.
And there's been so much fraud going on that they're checking it.
So at any rate,
double
and
checking.
if a lawyer gives you the advice, or the lawyer says he or she's going to look the other way, don't do it. Don't commit the fraud. And Greg, your comment about Judge Hathaway's case is
Well,
very,
and
very,
you can
very
take it a
appropriate
step further if you've been foreclosed on and now your property comes on the market. I don't know that you can buy it.
Sure you can. There's typically, there may be no restriction now unless it's in the affidavit. You got to read what the affidavit says, and you have to make certain that it's absolutely true. But typically, once it comes back on the market, there's going to be no restriction that you don't.
Well, I know we closed on one where the previous seller couldn't
You have to look at
purchase
the short sale agreement then,
Yeah.
and nobody within like the 4th degree of consanguinity or something
Yeah,
like
right.
that can purchase
6
it.
degrees of Kevin Bacon relationship.
Right.
Okay.
So anyway, what's your
Well,
question?
anyhow,
So can the lender determine who's going to buy it?
Yeah, the lender can prevent you from actually buying it
Yeah,
once
buying
it's
it back.
resold. Yeah,
Okay.
as a condition of the
Well, that
short
makes
sale,
sense.
they can
well,
do
yeah.
that.
I mean, think about it. Your house gets foreclosed on. They put it back on the market for $10,000. You've saved your mortgage payments. Now you have $10,000 in cash. You think they're going to be happy if you buy it back?
They may not. Some lenders won't care because they know the market value is the market value no
This
matter
one
what,
did.
but some of them do. There's another issue regarding unreasonable restraint on alienation, but that's an arcane, very complex subject we don't need to get into here. What's your
We
question?
don't have time.
What's your question?
Well, this one's a statement. There's a thing called the Michigan Hardest Hit Funds Program. So if you go to www.stepforwardmichigan.org, there are 4 programs. One is if there's unemployment mortgage subsidy program. So if you're unemployed, you're getting unemployment from the state of Michigan or from wherever, you may qualify. There's a loan rescue program that's for homeowners have fallen behind on their mortgage and property taxes, and they need to play catch up. There's a modification plan program. Homeowners that have fallen behind on their mortgage and homeowners with negative equity who are struggling to sustain their monthly payment. And then there's the principal curtailment program, and that's for homeowners who have negative equity. There's a 1-to-1 match from the lender to equal a total amount of assistance in $20,000, and the other 3 go up to $30,000. So if you fall, just go to stepforwardmichigan.org, see if you qualify. There are 0 interest rates, no monthly payments, and they're forgiven 20% each year, obviously for 5 years. So that might help someone. That helped our person yesterday, our friend. I think. I hope.
So there was no question in there.
No, that was
very good.
information.
Vital.
Exactly. Okay, my question. You ready?
Lay it on me.
So it's kind of a 2-sided question. So I'm a landlord, and
Court rules allow only 1 question at a time, and each question can ask only 1 subject at a time.
yeah, I
Go
don't
ahead.
have court rules in front of me, so it matters not. So I'm a landlord, and Greg's going to rent from me, and he wants to smoke medical marijuana. Can I stop him from doing that?
Yes.
How?
How?
Not that you do medical marijuana. I want to make that disclaimer right now.
Okay.
I can see those rumors
I
rolling.
say nothing.
It's odd that a lawyer would have to give a yes or no answer, so let me give the typical qualifier here. the Attorney General has rendered an opinion that, in fact, an owner of private property has the ability to prevent the use of medical marijuana on his or her property.
Really?
That includes not only private residences, it includes apartment complexes as the owner of the apartment complex, it includes owners of shopping malls, etc. The Attorney General had rendered that opinion in 2012. I'll be happy to give you a copy of it if you would like. Now,
Just
understand.
medicine.
What's the
No,
difference
but it's also
between-
smoking, and the issue, and this is going to reach the courts.
Are we
I'm
talking
sure.
about smoking, or are we talking about marijuana?
I know I
but-
can restrict cigarette. I can discriminate against you because you smoke a
It
cigarette.
is the smoking of marijuana,
Not that
and,
you
and
smoke
I'd
a
have to look
cigarette.
at the AG opinion to determine. My recollection is the AG opinion addresses smoking medical marijuana, and does not address the use of medical marijuana in other forms, namely putting them in brownies the way that I'm told they used to do at the University of Michigan back when I was there in the '60s. I don't have
Who knew?
personal. I don't have personal
Who
knowledge
knew?
of that, but I'm told that that's what people did. Okay? But I could look at the AG opinion, but it's smoking medical marijuana within the premises. I'm certain that's what's addressed in the AG opinion. Whether the AG opinion went farther than that, I don't know. Now, having said that, and I tell this to the seminars I teach and other people, an attorney general's opinion is not precedent which has to be followed by a court. The attorney general is simply the attorney for the state and the state personnel, and they have to follow his counsel or his advice. But any court in the land, the district court, circuit court, federal court, has the ability to ignore the AG opinion. So I'm certain that sooner or later this issue is going to hit the courts, namely, can a landlord prohibit use of medical marijuana as a smoking prohibition, since there is the statute which addresses persons with disabilities, which says that an owner of property cannot discriminate against an individual based upon a disability. So
But you,
that's
but
going to
you
be
can simply for smoking.
for smoking cigarettes, absolutely,
Right.
because
Right.
being addicted to
And we
cigarettes
do.
is not
You
a
can't.
disability within the meaning
You can't
of the
smoke
statute.
in your
Right.
apartment.
You cannot smoke in
buildings,
any of our
apartments.
apartments, right?
All
Or
right.
in our office building, et cetera. In any of our properties, there's no smoking. That's
But
a
what's the
different
difference
thing.
of smoking medical marijuana and if I need a pet, and I get a written little note from my doctor that says I need a cat to keep me comfortable,
Well,
to keep me sane.
okay, so
I want to
stop.
see that doctor.
Yeah.
Okay, stop.
So what's the difference?
You got to back up, because
that
your
I'm-
question isn't actually accurate, because there's a difference between a service animal and a comfort animal.
Okay.
Service animal, if
For the-
I am visually impaired and
Right.
I've got a seeing eye dog, that's clearly covered under the Persons with Disabilities statute. You can't bar that animal. So service animal is different. Now, if in fact, under the law, state and federal law, the way it sits right now, you've got different decisions in different jurisdictions. I don't think there's a decision out of Michigan yet in terms of whether or not a landlord has to allow a pet who provides emotional support for an individual. There are certainly some federal courts who have held that, in fact, the landlord must, upon documentation of a true emotional or other
They're not that
disability that requires a so-called, quote, comfort animal.
That must be a
end
case
quote.
by case basis.
It is very much. It's a case-by-case
Well, then,
basis.
do they have to qualify who's writing the prescription for the
Of
comfort
course,
animal?
it has to be a qualified
I mean, it can't be
professional.
just a
Qualified.
pharmacist.
No.
How about a nurse practitioner?
How about you?
Neighbor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't.
Neighbor, right.
I have a real
My
estate
dad's gonna
license, so
write.
can I?
No, it has to be a
prescribe
qualified medical professional. It has to be a recognized disability, and then the issue becomes: is it covered under the Persons with Disabilities Act?
Okay.
But there's a difference between a service animal and a comfort animal. Just make that distinction.
And so there's clearly a difference between medical marijuana and the
And
service.
marijuana? What?
Yeah, well, there's some municipalities that are just legalizing
Yeah,
small
so
amounts
simply
of marijuana,
simply
so-
wanting a cat for companionship does not fall within the
Justification.
Persons with
Okay.
Disabilities statute. Right.
Okay, all right. So the flip side of this question
What do you
is,
want to talk about from the animal's perspective?
yeah, exactly. So let's say Greg. I've leased to Greg, and Greg doesn't smoke medical marijuana, and however, I've leased to someone else in the building who has started smoking medical marijuana. I haven't evicted them because they pay their rent, but
And Greg's not? Wow.
and Greg's paying his rent, but he's not happy about it.
Yeah.
And I won't enforce the no medical marijuana.
Oh,
Smoking.
he typically has the ability to either, he can make the request to enforce. If you fail to enforce, he's going to be able to get out of his lease. That would be the typical thing, because you've represented in the lease, you've got rules and regulations. Lease typically provides that it will be enforced. You can't discriminate.
pick and choose.
Yeah, you can't pick and choose. I'm going to allow Joe Smith to smoke medical marijuana, even though the rules and regulations.
What about if Joe
Don't allow
pays more? They pay more rent.
No, it goes to your lease. In other words, Greg, if your lease contains the rules and regs, they apply to all of the units, I'm not going to be able to waive it for one tenant. Now understand, this is within the context of what's going to happen in the future, namely this issue of whether a tenant is going to be able to smoke medical marijuana, irrespective of the rules and regs, is still something that remains to get before the courts.
Are you taking calls?
Absolutely.
Good morning.
Yes. What about the growing of marijuana? You know, you're allowed to grow 12 plants or caretaker or whatever.
Yeah, now I can clearly prohibit that as a landlord. There's no doubt about that, because growing marijuana doesn't fit within the Persons with Disabilities Act. If I'm growing marijuana for someone else
talking
as a
about medical.
caregiver,
Yeah,
I know.
okay.
I know.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about
Same
medical
thing.
marijuana too.
Okay.
So the answer is yes, I could prohibit that as a landlord. I could prohibit the growing, and in fact, you're going to find municipalities that are adopting ordinances that will prohibit someone from growing medical marijuana within certain districts, particularly R1 residential districts. But yeah, as a landlord, at least right now, under the AG opinion, it's clear that I could prohibit the growing of marijuana.
Do you
So-
have animals?
Do I have it? We have 2 dogs.
I mean, do you allow animals?
Well, it depends on which property.
Okay.
If we have a single family house, we do with a non-refundable pet fee. If it's a multi-unit, like we have a 6-unit, I don't allow them there. It just is creates havoc.
Right, too difficult with
Yeah.
multiple
Even
tenants in the
comfort
building.
animals?
We have not had that request.
But if it's a service animal, the answer is yes. They
Yeah,
would be allowed
well, you have
service
to,
animal.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
On to the growing of we're dealing with it. The municipality of Jackson is having we're having a work group session on February 6th at 2 o'clock, 10th floor of City Hall. If somebody wants to come.
Free marijuana being
what?
distributed or what?
Yeah, well, no, it's a medical marijuana work group to
Wow.
get our ordinance figured out.
That should be a high all time.
It will certainly. It's always an interesting meeting. So can I, as a municipality, restrict if you can have medical marijuana? I can restrict you from growing it, because each person with a medical marijuana license can grow 6 plants or 12
I
plants.
refuse to
or
answer
whatever.
that question because I don't represent municipalities. I represent owners and developers and business proprietors against municipalities for a variety of reasons. And I never want a tape from this show in which I said that a municipality is authorized to adopt such an ordinance to ever be held against me. So I refuse
I
to
will
answer
only
the
sell those
question.
for large money.
Yeah, well,
Large
Jackie's
amount.
Well, we have them on
recording
our-
this.
Oh.
And I suspect that at some point I may be asked to represent an owner of property who wants to do something which may not be within the confines of the city's ordinance. And the fact you're on city council, you're just going to have to recuse yourself if the issue.
What
ever
is the
comes before
city?
you.
Do we even have an ordinance right now?
We have
I
a
mean,
moratorium on it right now.
Moratorium?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we're done dealing with the moratorium. We're ready to get an ordinance in place. Quite frankly, I have not. We've dealt with it probably. At least I've dealt with it the last year that I've been in office, and I've only heard people for it. I've heard one person against medical marijuana, and that's it. And we've heard from a lot of people. So it's clear that people want it. It's just a matter of where we're going to allow it.
And you can guess my attitude on the subject. I went to the University of Michigan in the 1960s for both undergrad and law school, and if anybody was in Ann Arbor in those days, they know exactly what the
So
attitude is.
as a landlord, though, I can allow you to smoke medical marijuana, but I can make it so you can't grow it in your apartment?
Yeah, I could prohibit growing. I don't know that there's any prohibition against it under the Persons with Disabilities Act, at least per the AG opinion. Again, I'm not the authority on it. I have to look to first the AG opinion, then I ultimately will look to circuit court and federal court decisions, which have not yet been rendered.
Okay. All right. So we're wrapping up. I have 3 things I want to say real quickly. This first-time homebuyer, Mishta money, $3,000 if you're a first-time homebuyer. I've got 3 great properties for you. 405 Seneca, which is in a really cool little subdivision, northwest corner of Detman and Michigan Avenue. There's subdivision back there that's really a hidden gem, 99.9. It's 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, great house. 940 Ellery Cream Puff, beautiful little house. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, everything's renovated in it, $49,900. And then 110 North Thompson, again, another cream puff, 2 full baths, 3 bedrooms, $64,900. Beautiful homes. First time home buyer, $3,000 you get.
And you look beautiful today, my dear.
Laura's number is 780-3830.
That's my direct dial number.